marvelous long reads.
By now, we've all seen the new Supergirl trailer. The latest entry in James Gunn's DCU will be directed by Craig Gillespie, and we'll see Millie Alcock return as the Girl of Steel. The movie is set to adapt the brilliant Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow miniseries by Tom King, and will have Alcock's Kara Zor-El trying to party on a galaxy with a red sun, only to get pulled into a revenge drama, helping a young Ruthie Mary Knoll get justice for her father's death against the big bad called Cram. Though initially uninterested in Mary's quest, Kara is forced into action when Cram attacks the duo and hits Kara's dog Crypto with a poison arrow. Now the only way Kara can create the antidote for Crypto is by finding Cram and his poison arrows. Eagle-eyed fans, meanwhile, also caught a glimpse of Lobo, Last Czarnian, making his DCU debut in the trailer. Lobo will be played by a familiar face, DCU's Aquaman himself, Jason Momoa. In the film, it sees Cram will be too powerful for Kara to handle on her own, which is probably why she might seek help from the main man himself. But Lobo is a bounty hunter, so it'll be interesting to see what trade Kara will have to make for Lobo's protection services. Now, Lobo is not really a protector, but he's no stranger to it. So today, we will discuss the 1990 Lobo, The Last Czarnian, run by Alan Grant and Keith Giffen, to see the main man protect a surprising ward across the galaxy. Chapter 1. Portrait of a Psychopath. We open on Lobo sitting in his desolate base in space, fuming. He's looking at a book in absolute fury. The book is called An Unauthorized Biography of Lobo. The main man is outraged that someone slandered his name and is planning to gut whatever the writer is when the communicator suddenly rings. An increasingly annoyed Lobo goes to find the computer to find a very amused Vril Dox II, or Brainiac 2, waiting for him. Dox tells the main man that he has a job for him. When Lobo tries to back out, citing personal matters, Brainiac 2 reminds him that after he defeated Lobo fair and square, the bounty hunter agreed to work for him. Lobo gives up and agrees to do what job Vril has. Much to the Last Czarnian's disappointment, it is a prisoner escort job. The grumbling Lobo speeds off into the galaxy, mumbling about the travesty that Vril instructed him on multiple occasions as well. The prisoner must be brought in alive. At planet Cairn, the headquarters of Brainiac 2's organization, Legion, Lady Quark questions Brainiac's decision to let Lobo handle this extradition. While she has doubts that Lobo will end up killing the prisoner on the journey, Dox has full faith in Lobo's word. While they discuss the achievements of the highly celebrated prisoner, Lady Quark glances at a copy of the prisoner's latest literary work, The Biography of Lobo. We cut to the first chapter of the book, which talks about Lobo at birth and the shenanigans as a child. The book describes Lobo as the serpent that destroyed Czarnian. Next, at Oneida 6, a Legion holding prison, Lobo is met with a partially automated cigar-smoking prison warden. The warden tells Lobo not to mess about, as they don't care for grandstanding psychopaths. He says that the prisoner Lobo is here for was the tutor for the son of the planet's leader and broke the law by flunking him. He keeps showing the main man a lot of attitude until Lobo gets tired and kills him in the elevator. Elsewhere, in a bookstore on Blake 7, the gang knows that the Sons of Lobo is destroying the entire bookstore, restoring copies of the biography on Lobo. The gang takes it upon themselves to kill whoever wrote the slanderous book on their main man. They ask their leader, Sickbag, how they will find the author. When the head honcho tells them the woman has been arrested on Oneida 6 and that they will have to take care of her there, the gang leaves for Oneida, destroying the bookstore with a loud bang in their wake. We next cut to the second chapter of the biography of Lobo, describing how he created an airborne, flesh-eating bug that killed his entire planet's population as he watched on in glee. Back on Oneida 6, Lobo is horrified to find out the prisoner is another Czarnian, so much for being the last Czarnian, who is none other than his 4th grade teacher, Miss Tribb. He goes into a fit of rage over the fact that he didn't kill all the Czarnians, while Miss Tribbs remarks that he is still as rude as ever. He contacts Vril Dox, who is reading the biography at the time, and shouts at him for hiding the truth from Lobo and promises to kill Dox for the deception. Brainiac 2 simply tells Lobo that he wants Tribb delivered him alive. To add insult to injury, Dox asks Lobo what the poor woman ever did to him to warrant so much hate, revealing that she was the writer of the biography on Lobo, a revelation that sends Lobo over the edge and into a hissy fit. Over on Ragansword, the bastion of retired gentlefolk, news of Tribb's trial is being televised. A table of old women belonging to the Legion of Decency Paramilitaries, SWAT, what a name, decide to come out of retirement to hunt down Miss Tribb for publishing a book that they deem to be a sleazy piece of trash. Meanwhile, Miss Tribb, now riding pillion behind Lobo's space bike, keeps antagonizing and criticizing the main man. The bounty hunter holds back demons to stop himself from killing the old woman. As Tribb keeps on whining about Lobo's mode of transportation and even slapping his his head occasionally if he retorts, they stop at the Scarf and Bath truck stop on Space Lane City 66 so that Lobo can go to the loo. On the way to the bathroom, he prays the old bat tries to escape. Miss Tribb sits alone at the table and loudly clicks her teeth at a couple of degenerate drinkers who are loudly conversing at the bar in front of her. She shouts at them for their poor use of grammar and their lack of manners, further angering the hooligans. While Lobo is dreading the journey ahead in the bathroom, he hears a loud crash. The main man rushes outside to find a group of people standing before Tribb, visually and visibly annoyed at the yapping old woman. Lobo intervened, using the brawl as the escape. He needed to vent out his frustrations about Tribb was absolutely pummeling the patron. Whilst Lobo kicks the 7 bells out of everyone around him, Miss Tribb simply sits and clicks her teeth in disappointment. Back at Cairn, Revel is given the report of Lobo's destruction. He instructs a unit to go out to the truck stop, but under no circumstances should Lobo be interfered with. Secretly, Dox revels in the chaos Lobo is spreading, smiling to himself that his plan is working better than he could have dreamed. We then cut to the 3rd chapter of the biography on Lobo, which is a transcript of a psychological evaluation that Miss Tribb procured from Legion, in which Lobo is annoyed by the doctor's line of questioning and takes the late Granny Noy's head off. As they keep travelling through space, Miss Tribb keeps complaining and annoying Lobo, leading the bounty hunter let out an enormous scream into the ether. Chapter 2, Lord of the Dance. In a seedy hotel, in a seedy town, on a seedy world, Lobo tells a man named Gus that he has to stand outside Miss Tribb's room and let no one in, and especially no one out. He goes to make a phone call, but not before warning Gus not to screw it up. He grumbles about the old woman slowing his journey down from a 7-hour shuttle to a full-blown marathon. He looks for a phone to check in with Dox, but can't find it. Lobo then starts pressing the service bell at the front desk, to which the manager shows up, visibly annoyed, and calls Lobo a moron. This would prove to be a costly mistake, as the main man loses his temper and is next seen in a private booth covered in blood. No points for guessing whose blood. On Cairn, Vril Dox picks up Lobo's call and pushes the bounty hunter's button by reminding him that Lobo must bring the old woman to him alive. Lobo hangs up in frustration when a man behind him tells the main man that there are other people who wish to use the phone, adding fuel to the bounty hunter's smouldering fire. Lobo walks off, questioning what happened to his reputation as a stone-cold killer. His hook drips with the blood of the latest person who annoyed him. The bounty hunter comes back from the hotel room to find Miss Tribb and Gus missing. He kicks down the door of the hotel and howls in rage at the thought of having to track both of them down. At the police headquarters on Oneida 6, the new police chief Rex is getting briefed on the coroner's report that the late Chief Bamuels was murdered by Lobo. The reptilian chief is, in his heart of hearts, grateful for Lobo killing his predecessor, but to protect his image declares that Lobo must be skinned for his crime against the honour of the Force. He orders a secret SWAT mission of volunteers, only to capture Lobo. Elsewhere in the galaxy, a group of truckers that Lobo beat within an inch of their lives figured that they ought to get revenge on Lobo for the beating he gave them. You can tell those truckers haven't learned their lesson yet. They plan to ambush Lobo outside Cairn, at Legion's only free access zone. We cut to a page from the biography on Lobo that lists down the 10 things to know when encountering the main man. The list includes Lobo's intelligence, his strong principled nature, tracking abilities, favourite colour, his bike specifications, and finally a few of the things that Lobo hates. Meanwhile, Lobo tracks Miss Tribb and Gus to a ballet performance called Rhapsody in Chainsaws. He pushes and shoves his way into the theatre and goes up to the balcony seats to get a good vantage point. He finds his teacher and Gus sitting directly below him. Miss Tribb thanks Gus for her accompanying her. Suddenly a man and his wife tell Lobo to get off their seats, which annoys the bounty hunter. Downstairs, the ballet performance is rife with scenes of gore and violence, which shock Miss Tribb, but Gus remains as excited as ever about the show. Meanwhile, Lobo, now done killing the man and his wife for their rudeness, admires the show and contemplates sitting back and enjoying it. He snaps out of it and jumps off the balcony straight into the unsuspecting Gus. Miss Tribb is horrified at the sight of her newfound companion lying squashed under Lobo's foot. Meanwhile, all around them, people bear witness to the gruesome murder of Gus and believe it now to be part of the act and applaud Lobo. The main man, now completely ticked off, proceeds to drag Miss Tribb out of the hall by her hair. The old woman pleads that she left Lobo a note about going out, but the bounty hunter wants to hear none of it. Suddenly, a bullet whooshes past Lobo's head. It's the Galactic Demolition Dance Company. They are angry at Lobo for upstaging them and want to teach the main man that the real art requires suffering. Boy, are they in for an artistic masterclass then. Lobo spit shines his hook, knocks his teacher out, and then jumps into battle with the ballet troupe. Initially, Lobo is bashed up by the dance company members before he brandishes his hook, which causes the troupe to collectively wet their pants. Lobo then proceeds to massacre the Galactic Demolition Dance Company with no remorse, much to the entertainment of the audience. After finishing his massacre, Lobo walks out of the theatre with an unconscious Miss Tribb on his shoulder. Near the free access zone outside Cairn, the sons of Lobo overhear that the truckers from Space Lane 66 plan to ambush Lobo. Sickbag instructs his gang to follow quietly behind the truckers and not to engage them in any way. He feels that Lobo can handle the entire convoy and would treat their interference as an insult. Elsewhere, the team from Oneida 6, led by Chief Rex, finds that Lobo is deviating from his charted course. Rex orders his crew to continue their course to the free access zone as the ship warps into hyperdrive. Somewhere else, the old ladies of the Legion of Decency also plan to set an ambush for the bounty hunter and his ward outside the free access zone. Wow, so many people blatantly gonna try and antagonize Lobo. I wonder, however, will this end? Meanwhile, Lobo is zooming through space. Miss Tribb sitting behind him. Lobo has now cut both of Tribb's legs off. The woman, being a Czarnian, is not really hurt by the act due to her self-healing powers. She, however, does not shut up about the perils of using unclean instruments in amputation, continues antagonizing the bounty hunter, making Lobo promise himself to cut the old bat's tongue out next. Meanwhile, on his base on Cairn, Vril Dox is looking at the reviews of the Pan-Galactic Dance Company's latest impromptu performance when he gets an update about unauthorized action being taken by Oneida 6 SWAT against Lobo. Whilst suppressing a gleeful smile, Dox orders the entire police force on Oneida be purged through internal affairs inquiry for engaging in unauthorized operations. He then adds the data of the SWAT team to the galactic map and looks at the big picture. The digital map shows a trucker convoy, closely followed by Sons of Lobo, the Legion of Decency and the Oneida police SWAT team all circling around Lobo's location and a rough area of conflict where they should all converge. Vril Dox triumphantly announces that his plan is all coming together perfectly. Chapter 3. Spell or Die. Next we see Commander Vril Dox II visibly annoyed at his officer, who is busily scarfing down humongous amounts of food. Vril exclaims that people like Lobo do not simply vanish into thin air. He accuses the officer of spending more time eating than scanning for Lobo. The morbidly obese man pleads that he has used up all possibilities and that if Lobo is still out there, he is not in a location they can pick up on. Dox begins to hypothesize what could have happened to Lobo, that everyone else would be their planned position except the bounty hunter. He briefly considers that Lobo has killed Miss Tribb, but dismisses it just as quickly. He tells the officer to keep scanning for Lobo and marches off in a huff. Vril reaches his police officers and starts to vent out his frustrations about his ruined, picture-perfect plan. He planned to have Lobo take the one person he wanted to kill the most across the universe whilst absolutely stroking the bounty hunter's frustrations into a murderous rage by making him promise to bring the prisoner in alive. He pauses to ask if the officer found anything. The officer replies that it has only been 2 minutes and so far he has nothing, making Dox snap at him in annoyance. He continues thinking out loud about his plan, which involved having the murderous Lobo eliminate tiny annoyances in Vril's reign, such as the Oneida 6 police chief was killed by Lobo, the paramilitary grannies of the Legion of Decency, and the Sons of Lobo, Spice Bike hoodlums. He adds the truckers and the Destructo Dance Company members as an unexpected bonus, given the truckers' unions beginning to dabble in intergalactic politics. The plan was to have Lobo kill all the parties, and Legion would swoop in to restore order, and none of it could have been traced back to Dox. Meanwhile, another officer comes to the commander's office, asking for a report, and is promptly thrown out, and literally, Vril shouts to his comms, asking the officer to locate Lobo. Outside Cairn, in the free access zone, the Sons of Lobo watch as the trucker from Space Lane 66 set up an ambush. The biker gang's leader, Sickbag, instructs his entourage that nobody will move on the truckers before Lobo has a go at them first. He says that the bikers must stay put until Lobo needs assistance. As he is speaking, they view a giant ship make its way into the free access zone. It's the old ladies from the Legion of Decency. In Legion HQ, the obese officer asks Vril how all the parties be so unaware of each other whilst being in such close proximity to one another. Dox replies that it's the asteroids in the vicinity playing havoc with their senses, and the fact that each of them is obsessively looking for Lobo. The officer noticed that the SWAT team from Oneida 6 has also moved into position. Brainiac 2 laments that all the players are in place except Lobo and wonders where the bounty hunter has gone. He tells the officer to keep observing but to take no further action while still scanning for Lobo. We next cut to a report card of Lobo when he was in the 4th grade, which is attached to the biography of Lobo. It is assessed by none other than Miss Tribb herself. In the paper, she fails Lobo in every subject, assessing him as poor in almost every subject. It does not mention that Lobo fared a little better in the sciences, mostly for violent and morbid exploits. Typical Lobo. The assessment also says that Lobo has no career opportunities unless there is a market in the universe for inflicting pain, injury, and death. Would you believe there was? Meanwhile, on a giant, mysterious ship, Lobo yells at Miss Tribb for not warning him about the oncoming enemy ship. They are both chained to a dirty holding cell full of skeletons. Miss Tribb, still without her legs, tries to make her case, but Lobo keeps shouting over her. He exclaims that he was gassed while he was relieving himself, and the old woman said nothing of the planet-sized ship next to them. Miss Tribb innocently asks how she was supposed to know the ship was hostile, to which the main man snaps back, asking if they've found a non-hostile ship on their journey yet. The old woman tells Lobo to just break out of the chains. But the bounty hunter explains that the wall they're chained to is bonding wall, which is synced to their nervous system. Breaking it would be the equivalent of ripping one's own guts out. Trib remarks that Lobo is just afraid, which pushes the main man over the edge. He tries to break out, but gas suddenly sprays everywhere. Lobo remarks that he can hold his breath for a long time, but eventually has to relent and take a breath, causing him to pass out from the gas. Two hooded figures appear over the unconscious Lobo and criticize his poor grammar. They order both the prisoners to be ready for the sacred bee competition. Lobo slowly stirs awake. He finds out that he and Miss Trib are on a dais for the 14th annual Orthography Commando Spelling Bee competition. Before them stands a row of hooded figures with their space guns aimed at the contestants. There is a handful of other aliens around them as well. One figure uses a dictionary and begins the competition. The figures introduce themselves as the Orthography Commandos, whose goal is to make the universe free of the ignorant and functionally illiterate. They explain the rules. Spell or die. Whoever wins 3 times can either choose to join them or be free. An alien next to Lobo shuffles uncontrollably, saying that he just needs to win one more time. Lobo asks the alien if he is the reigning champion, which the anxious alien nervously admits. Lobo looks around. His bomb is standing over a grate, which is most likely the knockout gas. The first contestant misspells oxymoron, getting their head slimed by the judges. This makes the competition interesting for Lobo, while Miss Trib scoffs that the bounty hunter will not get past the first round. The next contestant misspells syllabob. Miss Trib then spells Shambok correctly and bids her former student goodbye. Lobo's word is genocide. I know, right? Out of the possible words, which he easily spells out. The alien after Lobo, the champion, also spells his word correctly. 2 other aliens misspell their words and get blasted to oblivion. Lobo's next word is mutilation, which is the main man smugly spells out with ease. Another alien is slimed for misspelling. By now, the champion is sweating up a sea. Lobo thinks that the sweating alien will be a problem going forward. Miss Trib easily spells synergistic. The judges announce as they're down to the last 3 contestants, and the stakes are just going to be upped. The contestants must now spell and conjugate. Miss Trib smugly declares that Lobo won't get lucky this round. Lobo heeds his warning and tries something. The man whispers a boo into the ear of an already anxious champion next to him. The sweating alien, who is already a bundle of nerves, shrieks out and gets eviscerated by the judges for the outburst. The judges declare that for the final, both contestants will have to spell, conjugate, and suggest suitable autonyms for the word. Lobo then cries foul, stating that Miss Trib has an unfair advantage of being a teacher. The judges ask the old woman if Lobo's statement is true. Miss Trib admits the fact and further reveals that she has been badly abused by Lobo, who ruined her evening at the ballet and cut off her legs. Lobo triumphantly declares that she is a teacher, which is echoed by the judges. Lobo is then tied up in every manner imaginable, much to his dismay. The judges declare that, for the abuse of a sacred giver of literacy, the bounty hunter's punishment must be death. They aim their space guns at Lobo and prepare to fire. Lobo finally gets his chance and breaks out of his chains. He begins to lay a smackdown on the hooded judges, whilst telling them that they should have stuck to the gas jets. Miss Trib simply tells one of the judges that they obviously didn't read her book, or else they would have known that it was a bad idea to simply chain him up. Lobo tears the entire ship apart, beating the snot out of every hooded figure he can get his hands on. We then cut to another report card of Lobo's from the book. This is one from when Lobo was in the 5th grade. In the assessment that is clearly filled out by Lobo himself, he has A+ in every subject and has been heavily praised by himself. Here, in Career Opportunities, Lobo writes that the sky is the limit. He could be a philosopher, or a brain surgeon, or even a scientist. As always, he threatens to kill the reader for disagreeing. Meanwhile, Lobo is back on his bike, speeding through space, while Miss Trib is back to being an irritating thorn in the main man's side. She questions Lobo as to where they're going now, which the bounty hunter flatly says is none of her business, causing the old woman to scoff at his petulance as the pair speed off. On the planet Cairn, Vril Dox is notified about a communication sent by Lobo. Dox instructs his officers to patch the bounty hunter through. He demands to know where the bounty hunter has been, to which Lobo simply tells Dox not to mouth off at him, as he has been already having a bad week. Dox again inquires about the condition of Miss Trib, to which Lobo replies that she is still okay as part of their deal. When Vril inquires if they're on their way in, the main man declares that he is in desperate need of some rest and recreation, and that he is staying in a room on Revel 7, having some well-deserved fun. Lobo is surprised at how easy the whole call went, expecting Vril to put up more of a fight. While Dox is thinking about the conversation he just had, he suddenly realizes that Lobo announced his location over an unsecured line, which would let all the enemy spaceships listening to the call outside the free access zone know where the main man is. He rushes to his obese officer, who reports that all the spaceships are moving out, and they were all indeed listening to the call. The officer questions why Lobo would contact Vril on a public line, to which Dox explains explains that Lobo doesn't know about the listening ships and the fact that the bounty hunter is an imbecile. Vril laments that Revel 7 is a party world with no army or police, just a neutral and safe tourist destination in its peak season. Outside the access-free zone, all the ships scramble to get to Revel 7 with a quickness. Brainiac 2 groans in disgust at the fact that Revel 7 is soon going to go from being a hedonistic paradise to a wasteland very soon. On Revel 7, Lobo and Miss Trib are sitting and lounging on a balcony. The old woman declares a distaste for the concept of a vacation, whilst the main man simply pours himself a drink and tells Trib to shut up and drink her Mai Tai. Chapter 4. The Last Czarnian. We open on Lobo sitting and smoking his cigar on Revel 7, the party world. There are a lot more tourists in this hotel, which the main man finds irksome. Miss Trib, still without legs, is seated next to him and admonishing Lobo for his decision to make a stop at Revel 7. Lobo admits that maybe the location wasn't as fun as it was hyped up to be when Trib sarcastically suggests that the bounty hunter would rather see a maiming, rioting and carnage. The main man licks his lips at the idea and begins scheming. Lobo picks up the screaming old woman and hangs her by the collar on a coat hanger in a changing room. Miss Trib shouts and protests at Lobo's manhandling, but it falls on deaf ears. Lobo closes the door behind him and walks off. He runs into a drunk partier, whom he chokes out to find out where the phones are. Partier struggles but manages to get the word lobby out of his mouth, following which Lobo puts the man's head through a wall. On the planet Cairn, Vril Dox is cribbing about the failure of his perfect plan. He blames himself for the impending groups of madmen converging upon Revel 7 to try and kill an even madder man. He's left with no other choice but to directly involve Legion in the matter. Punching up his computer, Dox orders Control to patch him through to the duty room. Suddenly, he's interrupted by an officer who brings news regarding Lobo from Revel 7. He tells Vril that the bounty hunter has managed to broadcast a message to the whole planet. In the message, Lobo tells the dwellers of Revel 7 that he is going to begin enjoying his vacation and that he's giving everyone a total of 5 hours to abandon the planet, because after the 5 hours are up, he is going to go on a rampage and kill everyone still on the planet. Vril Dox groans in disgust at the state of affairs and orders a battalion of shock troops to stop Lobo. Dox marches off back to his office, grumbling about how Lobo's actions reflect poorly on Legion and how everything is just a joke to the psychotic Lobo. We next cut to an expert from the bibliography on Lobo, which is a dissertation by Miss Trib on heavy rock music being a factor in the development of a psychopath. In the document, Trib mentions how Lobo's first contact with rock music came from the not-so-mysterious death and disappearance of his nanny. It lists down Lobo's history with rock music and how the horrifying lyrics must have had an adverse effect on how baby Lobo over the year. Trib also mentions a story about Lobo starting his own band, and a rumour about the bounty hunter having a micro receiver fitted into his audio lobes, though there is no corroborating evidence, as the clinic was burned down to the ground, along with the death of all the staff shortly after Lobo's visit. She also narrates the tale of how Vril Dox tricked Lobo into working for Legion. Dox fought Lobo in an epic battle, where Lobo could have easily killed Dox, but the radio station, called the Cosmic Rock Zombie, went off the air for 2 hours, as Lobo had grown too accustomed to listening to the cacophonic sound of the music played on the station. He lost his edge, and a boosted Dox managed to defeat him. Back on Revel 7, tourists are rushing towards the exit, causing absolute bedlam. People were so in a rush that they weren't even letting the pilots of the ships get through. The main man, meanwhile, enjoyed the carnage unfold from a distance, whilst lounging on a deck chair and smoking his cigar. Now this was more his style. All around him, people were falling off roofs and flames were beginning to spout up. Lobo laughs at the poor souls, stating that it was only joking, and that his promise to deliver Miss Trib to Dox would mean he couldn't possibly have stayed long enough to kill all the people on the planet. Meanwhile, Miss Trib keeps shouting from inside the changing room, demanding to know what's happening. Lobo orders her to keep it down and proceeds to chug a copious amount of Mai Tais. Outside Revel 7's planetary orbit, the old ladies of the Legion of Decency ready their ships to scan for Lobo and Miss Trib. They pick up the signal of the trucking convoy in a synchronous orbit with them. At the same time, the truckers are also notice the Legion of Decency ship and realise the old woman are after Mr. Trib, and in turn, Lobo himself. Their leader decides that no one will get a piece of Lobo except the truckers themselves. Meanwhile, Sickbag instructs the Sons of Lobo gang not to fire on the truckers until Lobo needs them to. Suddenly, the ship carrying Chief Rex and Onanita 6 SWAT enters hyperspace and lands up right in the path of the trucker convoy. The result? A loud kaboom as the ships collide. The poor Sons of Lobo are too close to the truckers and go straight through the fiery inferno. Meanwhile, on Revel 7, the entire infrastructure is collapsing all around whilst Lobo sings a song on the karaoke machine. Lobo seems to be enjoying his vacation and considers extending his stay. Contemplates breaking his promise to Vril just the one time before looking up in exasperation at the chaos around him. The Legion of Decency floats above the planet, awestruck by its warlike conditions. While they search for Miss Trib, they look around the planet to see a variety of indecent peep shows which shock the prude old woman to their core. The ladies put Lobo on the back burner and focus their attention on inflicting their so-called morals on the planet. The ship's weapons fire the cannons all around, destroying the infrastructure further. Outside the planet, the storm troopers of the Pan-Galactic Demolition Dance Company stand ready to face Lobo again. Yes, they actually went back for an encore. Their ship is about to enter orbit when suddenly all the ships collectively leaving the planet rush out in the opposite direction. The crew is taken by surprise, and before they can maneuver out of the stampede of ships, they collide and burst into another spectacular ball of fire. All the while, Lobo has already taken off from Revel 7 and is looking out at the light show above with a scoffing Miss Trib sitting beside him. The old woman asks the main man if he is satisfied with the carnage he has caused, which Lobo proudly admits to and claims that he is refreshed as well. Suddenly, the Legion battalion flies over the pair of them, and Lobo revels in the fact that they are probably going to the train wreck of the party he left in his wake. Miss Trib calls the main man an evil, sadistic and certifiably insane monster, which her former pupil takes as a compliment. Back on Cairn, an officer goes to find Vril Dox with his head in his hands and informs him that Lobo has arrived. Dox initially asks about the prisoner, but shrugs it off, stating that he'll find out soon enough. On his way, Vril thinks about the damage Lobo has caused, millions of casualties, half a planet destroyed, and nothing that can be pinned to on Lobo other than a threat which we would probably call a little joke. He takes solace in the fact that if a prisoner is still alive, then he can still consider Lobo a man of his word. Dox takes a deep breath and walks into the detention cube to find a triumphant Lobo with a legless Miss Trib. He asks Lobo what happened to the old woman's legs, which Lobo just passes off as an old person forgetting things. Dox sighs in disgust and accepts that Lobo has held his end of the bargain and tells the bounty hunter that he will over custody of the prison now. The words ring like music to Lobo's ear, and the main man subsequently breaks Miss Trib's neck in one swift motion. Lobo tells Vril that he delivered the old woman alive in Doc's custody, adding the Brainiac hair had never specified what was to happen of her once he took custody of the old bat. Laughing maniacally, the bounty hunter leaves Vril with the mangled corpse of Miss Trib. Dox, fed up with Lobo's antics, buries his head in his palms when an officer comes to give him more news. Vril is so annoyed that he politely requests the officer to please leave him alone, and then walks away, shocking the officer who has never heard his chief ever say the word please to him. And that was the Chronicles of the Main Man, when he got put in a situation which required him to be the saviour instead of the person people generally need saving from. This was the version of Lobo we might get to see in the Supergirl movie as well, and he very well might, because fun fact, though Lobo wasn't in the Woman of Tomorrow comic, Tom King has publicly revealed his initial draft of the Woman of Tomorrow run had Lobo and Kara team up and have a kind of dynamic similar to Matty Ross and Rooster Cogburn from the classic novel True Grit, with Kara being the vengeful and youthful Matty and Lobo the ruthless but fair Cogburn. Only time will tell if the theories are right or not. What are your thoughts? What version of Lobo would you like to see in the Supergirl movie? Comment down below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on. Have a marvellous day ahead.